So, welcome everyone to the first episode of the PM Saga. So, we have here Mike Hyzy, and he's one of the people I have had the pleasure actually to meet this year in one of the podcasts on the new product innovation. But in this episode, we're going to discuss about the story of Mike Hyzy and how he started as a product manager and the story from when he started in college until today. So, Mike, welcome on board.
Thank you. Nice to see you and be the first guest on this exciting new podcast that you're taking over.
So, Mike, if you can give us a little bit about yourself for the audience, so your personal and professional background.
Yep. Sure. I live in the north suburbs of Chicago in Lake Forest. I'm a senior principal consultant in Darty Business Solutions. I focus on product development and IT strategy and some other organizational strategy and change management initiatives, and really excited to be here. Super excited about product management in general.
That's quite good. So, Mike, the whole point of doing this kind of episodes is that we want to inspire people who want to enter into product management, actually new and junior product managers, on the great experiences and challenges they're going to face across their careers. And I want to start first by when did you actually start thinking about product management? I understand from you that you started doing that since you were in college.
Yeah, I think it was more entrepreneurial in college, and that entrepreneurial spirit kind of came over college in my first job, turned more to an entrepreneur, right? And when building the first kind of startup social enterprise that I co-founded and started, well, we had to build a website, and then we had to build a mobile application, right? And I didn't even know that was digital product development at the time, but it was a necessary means to the end, right? We had to reach out to people, we had to sell more products in our service and things like that. So I think it was towards the end of my second startup when I started looking for a job, and someone's like, "Oh, you should go into product management." And I was like, "What's that?" And it's like, "Oh, you've been doing it." So it was kind of, I didn't set out to be a product manager. It kind of came like, all right, well, where do my skills lie? And how could I be gainfully employed? And I got the opportunity to work with a great team as my first job as an associate PM.
That's quite good. So, would you actually advise young professionals still in college that they should actually start developing small new projects about simple products when they are actually still in college, and because this will help and support them as you go into the market or not?
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I think the opportunity that I had, back in the day, not to age myself, but the e-commerce websites that you could go on and build yourselves were just starting. Like Shopify was in its early development and launch, right? So I didn't have to know code to go out and build a product. I had to pay a monthly fee to have the creator platform to create a store on Shopify, right? So, there's even more opportunities now, Squarespace and no code apps. There's even no code machine learning platforms now, right?
Yeah.
So there's no excuse if you want to go into product not to build something yourself, right? And try it with your friends, try it with your family, maybe build an app or a website, your own portfolio, right? That works for you, but build something.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. So after you did Crisp mobile grocery application, right, you transition into Nutricio, and you tried so hard to get that product invested in. And I understand that until today, the website is still on. I went through on it as well. So would you actually try to pursue this again today with the AI empowerment? Because this was mainly an analytics and website to start building your own diets and stuff, right? So, with
Yeah.
the current state that we have in the AI field, would that be something that you'd like to use it now to try and pursue that again or not?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let me give some context. So, Chris was my first, non construction or just like not a solo entrepreneurial gig, right? I was working for a nonprofit. I had a very visionary boss at the time, and he's like, "Hey, we're going to talk to USDA. We're going to get a waiver to be the first mobile grocer in Chicago to accept food stamps." And I'm like, "Hell yeah, let's do it!" Right? Like innovative, socially equitable. There's so
Yeah.
many things about it. Like wanting to do it, and we built the website and the market, and being on the ground on the south and west side and working with community organizations and interviewing your end users, right? And like, okay, food access is a big issue, but I also see that knowing about food, right? And the misconceptions about healthy eating, oh, it's expensive, it doesn't taste good, I don't like it. I saw food education as a big gap. So, after Crisp, I actually had an investor reach out that wanted to buy Crisp from the nonprofit. And that didn't work out. So he's like, "Hey, you got any other ideas?" And I'm like, "Well, there's actually this other point, right?" And I think that's the other thing. I kind of like jumped into it. But the need was really there, right? Because no matter low income, high income, there's a lot of people that deal with food related diseases, right? Obesity, heart attacks, hypertension, all big problems in the United States. So the initial thought was, well, how can we make it easy, right? People do things that are easy that come natural. So Nutricio, the foundation was, let's analyze what's on sale at the grocery store, put that together in packages that are low cost ideas for you to cook at home, and let's take the data and connect it to your needs, right? So maybe I'm a pescatarian who likes jambalaya or Creole food, right? Like just be able to
Yeah.
create those combinations. And it was great. There's a lot of work that goes into it, right? And I am not I love data. I'm not close to a data scientist or anything like that. So there's a lot of manual calculations and algorithms on Excel spreadsheets, getting in design, getting in development. So to go back to your first question, where we are now, I think this is almost 8 years later, right? When the initial concept came up, would I do it again? Well, I left the website up for a reason. And I'm luckily, I work with a bunch of great data scientists today
Yeah.
at Doherty, and maybe we'll pick up a side project one of these days, because I think the need is still there, right? I mean,
Yes.
these health issues that we're talking about didn't go away. Inflation is hiking up food prices more than they've ever been at, right? So it's now more expensive to get groceries than ever in the United States. So if someone came out with a solution that was really easy to eat healthy on a budget, I think that's still there, right? And then that was my first foray into gamification as well, right? So when we were
Yes.
designing Nutricio and Crisp, right, is like, as you know, as I was on your podcast for the book, the gamification book that I co-authored, is that, it's a little bit of habit forming, like how do you create habit forming products, right? Nuriel, great thought leader in that space. Richard Thayer, Nudge, right? How do you create choice architecture for people to do things? Can it be done? Yes. There's a lot of different points to make this successful, right? There's
Yes.
the incentives, there's the retention, the engagement, things like that. So, one of these days, I might be looking for another challenge, and we'll spin it back up again. I did marry a dietitian, right? So I have some support there as well.
Yeah, I think this gives a really great lesson because I think entrepreneurs and product managers actually should actually pursue incomplete projects, right? And especially when there's a new trend on the rise. So I think at that time, possibly the infrastructure and everything was not really on the level that supports that kind of project. But today, with AI and everything happening and data science, I think
Mm-hmm.
doing that and using that for the analytics part is going to be quite much more simpler and less resources as well.
Yeah, especially when you build your own LLMs on OpenAI right now, right?
Yeah.
Like you have that. Even Google has these no-code ML models that you could put together, and there's a lot of no-code platforms, right? Like if you have a good enough design taste or style, whatever you want to call it, you could create your own apps and launch them on the store. So,
Yeah.
you're motivating me. I hope not to take another project over the winter.
No, that would be a great one. So when we're looking now at your journey into product management, you mentioned during our correspondence that you had key influences in your life. One of them was your college professor. So understanding that having a mentor is quite important. So if you can give us some context on that, and for the young product managers, how do you actually find a mentor?
Yeah, I think like to me, it was always, there was a time and a place, right? I was in college. It was my second stint in college. I wanted to come out on a high note. I wanted to ace every class that I had at that point. And as an economics major, and economics is complex. And I remember being in price theory, which is one of the one of the complex economic topics. And I had a teacher who distilled it in a way that it like unlocked my mind to understand how like the global economy works, right? On both a macro and a micro level, specifically in the interactions and trends and all these things. And he'd use great examples of like Guinness as an economic model, right? And all these things are related to. And then, we created that relationship. Me and a few other students have a beer with him, a Guinness with him, and talk to him. And just his insights were really motivating. And the thought leadership that he brought, like, not only influenced me, but it made me become a better student, right? And I really took that in, and economics is still the base of the foundations. And as I wrote in the book, like in product management, you have to know how to price your product, right? You have to know your competition, or what are your competitors charging? Why are they charging that? How does money move across markets? All that I think are great insights for a PM. And that was just like, he was one mentor right at that time, graduated, the visionary boss of Chris that I told you about, Angel. He was another, like, oh my God, you could make money and do good at the same time. Social entrepreneurship, right? That was a great mentor. And I was a little, I'd be honest, I was a little rough around the edges, right? Out of college, never worked in a business environment before. So he was a good mentor there, I think. And probably a couple other people would have let me go, but he took the time to provide that business acumen for me. And then when my first actual job in product management was a great mentor, Ahmad, who's still I look as a mentor today, right? And run things by him if I'm thinking about a big project or idea or writing a book. He was actually one of the reviewers of the gamification book, right? So still supporting, 7 years after I worked for him.
Yeah,
And
wow.
yeah, I think I don't think there's like a formula to it, right? It's like, do you meet someone that will take the time to mentor you, to shape you? Do you like the relationship? And then sometimes it's tough feedback. And I think my advice to any PM is, like, if someone gives you feedback, don't get insulted by it. Don't, get
Yes.
bent out of shape. Feedback is a gift, right? So take that feedback, think about it. Do I agree with all of it? No, I agree with 80% of it, right? So take that 80%. Is that 80% going to make me a better PM? Yes. All right. So take that, learn from it, and really cherish those relationships.
Yeah, I think usually people get a bit scared or afraid or sometimes embarrassed to reach out to someone asking for help. But I think if you don't try, you won't get the help anyway, right? I think this is
Yeah.
one of the things that you should actually do. If you find someone that inspires you, that you think consider him as a role model, for example, you should actually reach out to him. Everyone is always ready to support and help.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
know what? Some people might say, "Hey, I don't have time. I'm busy." Don't let that stop you.
Yes.
There's someone I've been mentoring. She reached out on a Slack channel for a product management group and said, like, "Hey, I want to go through a career transition. I want to be a better PM. Looking for some advice." So went out, had coffee, had a couple sessions, right? Gave her feedback. She's got a great new job now, right? And she's excelling at her product career. And that,
Wow.
it's just give back, right? Because people help me, help other people. Pay it forward.
Yes, yes, exactly. That's great. So we looked at the initial career, we looked at the influences part. Now let's look at the part where everyone actually wants to hear more about, the challenges part. So one of the things
Yeah.
that really inspired me in what you've wrote is that you had good challenges in adapting to corporate structures and process. And if you're looking back at it now, so what are the key points that you think helped you adapt more?
I for corporate challenges in general, like, there are, from being in the startup space and being in the corporate space, it's whatever easy as one's hard in another, right? You have the freedom in
Yes.
entrepreneurship, but you have none of the safety or control, right? In corporate, you get a paycheck, you have a job, you have some stability, but it's incredibly hard to get anything done because there's so many layers of management and red tape, right? And being able to understand the challenges in the corporate environment and play the politics, right? Like, I think someone will talk about a little later, there's a little bit of sales and product management, right? You got to be able to sell your team on the mission and vision. You have to take your product or the features you want to build on your product and sell that to your boss and his boss and maybe the company CEO, right? Like, there's a little bit of wordsmithing, right? And politicking that goes into the
Yeah.
product management. And I think that's always a challenge. And I'll never say I like doing it, but it's a necessary means to the end. And then, working with big teams, and then just like internal politics, to where, you and the engineering director might not see eye to eye, right? So what do you do about that? Maybe you don't have a good direct relationship with him. So maybe you have to make really good relationship with engineers under him, right? Or the design team or marketing or legal, like whatever that is. When you're in a company, the corporate challenge is that you're working with so many diverse groups of people, right? And you have to be able to align all of them into your vision and mission for the product. But also, they're experts in their area, right? Listen to them when they have feedback.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you're a little bit too aggressive on your timeline. Engineering team says, "Hey," I mean, my favorite quote from an engineer, I don't know if I said this before, but he's like, "You can't have 9 women make a baby in 1 month." Right? When we were trying to, I'm just like, hire more engineers, bring more people on, we'll get it done. He's like, it doesn't work like that, Mike.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So,
You're right.
yeah, and the marketing team, they're creatives in their spot, and they know messaging and social media and advertising and things like that. So learn from them, but also try to you're the storyteller of your product. So they need to understand the story from you first before they could do their magic and get that insights out to the world.
Yeah. Based on all I've seen and actually read so far from what you said, that I could actually deduct three things that you mentioned quite clearly, right? Having a mentor, having the passion, the discipline. This all helped you through all these kind of challenges to do the adaptation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we touched on the first two. I think like the discipline part, it's like always be learning, right? Like, and I'm not just saying like certifications, learning. That's why I love being in consulting, because it's not just my perspective. I have access to 2,500 other consultants, and some of them are way better product managers than I am, right? So in
Wow.
that team, if I have a product problem, I could reach out to them and like, oh, I did this at this one client, right? I did this in agriculture, or if I'm doing something in finance, do something like CPG, right? Like, what did you do with CPG? The industries don't always have to align. I think that's where some creativity comes out, right? Like, look into
Exactly.
different industries, a level or two removed over, see what they did, and just like the learning opportunities, right? The data science team is doing lunch and learns, or the project manager goes to a conference about what they did at a big CPG, right? We have that learning environment. So as a product manager, it's out there, right? There are newsletters and Slack, yourself included, right? I follow you on LinkedIn. I love all the insights that's how we first connected, because I see all the
Yes.
insights that you post, right? So I love learning from you. I love learning from others in the area, because you have different perspectives. And there's been some other people I reached out to on LinkedIn. I'm like, hey, you're an expert in this area. I'm having an issue. Can you help me? Yeah, and you learn something there, get a certification. That's why I'm linked. We're both in PDMA. PDMA is to me, the best library of academic product development, product management resources that I found yet.
Yes.
And it's at a different level, right? There's the product school for the initial things and getting into product management. But once you hit like a leadership level and you're looking into really like deep and like scientific research backed product
Yes.
development material, PDMA is great for that, product strategy and so forth.
Yeah, I think this
They
is
didn't,
really good.
yeah.
No, I think this is brilliant because at the end of the day, we need really to adapt as much as we can, especially in this kind of economic downturns and all these fluctuations happening, especially after COVID. But I think for anyone actually trying to join a new career in product management, we really should be able to be hungry to learn more. So getting that continuous learning, the discipline part, and be adaptable to change, because change is going to happen. Change is the only constant out there. I think this is the part that summarizes quite well. So if we wanted to go more now into the deep diving into more of the professional highlights and the achievements you've done over the years. So I loved what you did with Crisp Mobile Grocery. So you said you were able to actually achieve around $3 million in revenue in the first 18 months. But
Yeah.
one of the questions that actually stopped me is that how did you feel when you were doing that kind of fast scaling? Were you scared of something? Were you actually worried about something? And how do you actually avoid spreading too much thin or taking too much while trying to get your product on the market?
Yeah, I mean, I did for sure. I spread myself too thin. I spread the delivery area for Chris way too large, because I'm like, more is better. We'll take any order that we could get. And if I went back and I did it again, I would a little bit slower growth, but it would be concentrated in areas, right? Like, let's pick a couple neighborhoods south, start there, or go west and start there, and then build that relationship with community groups and build. But when I first heard about the issue of food deserts, it was from a professor at UIC. I read a lot of her research, and I wanted to make sure every mom that had kids that needed healthy food had it at the same time. And when we got into it and we started the business, we realized that wasn't like the target market that would buy it immediately. It was actually seniors, because seniors that were in Chicago, after the Great Migration in the 80s, like, they grew up cooking food. They knew how to cook. They had cooking equipment. But their issue was like they physically could not carry all their groceries from the grocery store onto the bus and back, right? So
Ah,
when we
okay.
said we have a grocery delivery service and seniors started popping in, and we did adjust things too, because like, we don't want to use phone or the internet. Like, we want forms and we want to do that. So we actually built a large part of our customer base through paper forms and calling in orders, which seemed completely backwards at the time. But these are the people that are saying like, hey, we want to buy from you, right? And then using that revenue and showing that we had growth. And then as a social enterprise, we had opportunities for grants. So we got grants from American Heart Association, USDA, I forgot who else, but they supported us, and then we were able to like, hey, let's do some community outreach things. We'll play some games. We'll go out. We'll offer food and nutrition classes as well as the grocery delivery, right, and allowed us to expand our market. But it was fast, and yeah, it was. I mean, always fear of failure, always fear of a lot of things actually in Crisp, right? Like our warehouse was in back of the yards in Chicago. We had 3 trucks, very young staff. Yeah, it was nuts, but it was fun, and it's nice to see too. Like, and as it evolved, I think the need for that. We were the first one to have the USDA waiver for food stamps, but now Amazon does and Walmart does, right? And we're
Yeah.
ahead of our time, and other people noticed what we were doing. The big companies noticed, and they took over. So I'm glad we played a part in that change.
That's quite good. I think one of the things you mentioned now, moving from Crisp, so to moving to Live Fitness Halo platform, right? And if we can give some context to the audience, because I think there is lots of good learning there.
Yeah, I mean that was my first official job as a product manager, and I had a great team who I still talk to today weekly on a text chain. So really tight group, and we had a big mission. Like I came in, like I was like they didn't have a role for they didn't have a product manager in one of their apps for a couple months, right? So it wasn't there wasn't attention given to it. I'd come in, get it back to speed, right, and working in this new environment, and especially an international company too. My first international company. So first time building an app that had to be accessible in 32 languages, right? So that was a whole different level of product development, right? Translations and how you integrate that into your platform and your processes. And then it started with an app. I think there was 3 different CEOs at Life Fitness while I was there.
Oh.
So needless to say, things changed around a little bit. And then it's like, all right, we're going to ditch that app. We're going to build a whole new platform. And it's going to be gym management and consoles and an application. And we're going to rebrand Halo. And I mean, it was crazy. Like I was working consultant hours for a long time. Our tech, we had teams in Singapore, Russia, in the United States, right? So at 6 a.m. calls, at 9 p.m. calls. I mean, it was product management. It was thrown into a fire of product management, and that's how you learn. Though, I got up to speed pretty quick on what a product manager does. But we got to go. I got to travel internationally, nationally, and release this new platform with a great team who I love dearly. So, was it tough work? Yeah, but did I learn a lot? Definitely. And I don't know where it is today. I haven't really checked back up on it, in a while, but. I mean, there's so many different levels, like, different user bases, exercisers for the app, gym managers for that management platform, personal trainers. We even sold API platform to an electronics company in Japan. So again, other late night calls and language barriers and things like that, right? Especially like talking technically is hard enough, talking technically with a language barrier is even harder. So yeah. So fun stuff.
Yeah. But I think one of the great things here is that you started building an app, but at the same time, you were trying to build a complete ecosystem, right? You said there was gym management, you were trying to work out tracking apps. If you look at now the ecosystem as a concept, right? What was the best lesson that you learned from this?
You have to have a great foundation if you want to have multiple products, right? So if you're building a platform, your foundation needs to be solid. The amount of technical debt that went from moving too fast on a legacy platform created all different types of problems. And again, I don't know where it is now, but by the time I left, it was never functioning the way it should have because of all that tech debt dragging it down, right? And that another case, right? What would you see even myself and Chris, right? It's like, we're going to do everything everywhere all at once. And maybe just focus on, a couple things at a time in progression, right? Because consistently our team, again, this wasn't just me, but the team I was on was working on the exercise equipment platform, right? So the digital consoles, the app, the gym management website, the API platform, and it wasn't that big of a team, right? So, I remember doing a comparison when I worked there. I'm like, how are we going to do all this stuff? And I looked to see how many people are on the Samsung app, and they have 200 product managers or 200 people on their app. And I think we had, oh God, 6, 7, right? Like it was like one squad or one pod for the app.
That's tough. That's actually quite tough.
Yep. So fun stuff. But yeah, again, for if you're going to build a platform of multiple products, have a technologically sound platform, right? Get something secure to build upon. Find the right partners, right? Whether that's Google or AWS or Azure, whatever it is, right? Get your partners in a row, plan this out, and also like think 18 months ahead, because by the time you build and launch it, you're going to be behind. So
Yeah, yeah.
what are you trying to do?
No, I fully agree with you. I think that technical debt and every product manager, I think I've seen this across too many people, right? We're all very ambitious. We're all very passionate about our products. I want to do
Yep.
this. I want to do that. We should do it, right?
Yep.
But sometimes we need to put like brakes, stop, think, and then
Yep.
start executing.
Yep.
I think this is, and the roadmap part, right? It's just like, I want to do this and that. But if you don't have actually a solid roadmap, as you mentioned, solid foundations, and taking things and looking at your resources and what's actually feasible instead of what you want to do, that will make a whole lot of difference.
Yeah. And I think now
Yeah.
too, like shiny object syndrome too. It's like, oh, I want to go do something in AI. And it's like, well, no, let's pull it back. Right? Like, what is your business goal? What are the metrics and KPIs that you have to get to your business goal? And what tools do you need to help you get there? Do you need AI? Or do you need to do a strategy session with some design thinking and some mental model shifts, right? Because you're not identifying opportunities. Or, like we talked about earlier, like gamification isn't something you go do. Gamification is a tool to get you where you need to do. And I think surprised how many lose sight of that, right? And just like, oh, let's go build something cool,
Yeah.
like with a large language model. And it's like, all right, great. Like, what's your business goal? Do your users want
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. Fully agree with this. I think one of the things that actually inspired me a lot reading through the material here is that as product managers, right, as you mentioned before, we learn from other people, and we always need to give back, right? And I think always giving back to the community, not just to other people as well, is making sure that your community gets better will always instill lots of the great soft skills in you as a product manager. So it's not just something different on the personal, but also on the spiritual one. So I understand that you directed a documentary short film on prevention through engagement. So if you can work with the audience, just do brief sentences on what does it mean and how did it contribute more to helping your community.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I was very fortunate. Internship in college. I think I applied too late for any econ based internship. So there was a media company called Fig Media that hired me as an intern, and I got to work in photography and videography. They did DJs, great company. And one of my current friends now, I met him there. He's like, hey, you want to do a documentary on Chicago Bears super fans? And I was like, that sounds cool. He's like, yeah, hold the equipment. Come with me. Right. So the same progression, right? Like just got in
Yeah.
there and ended up going to Sundance and working for Sundance for, a couple of years and really being in the film community. And obviously, I was on the product path, right? I knew that's the path I wanted as a career, but as kind of release, right? Like a creative outlet, did some film stuff. So did some TV commercials, did some nonprofit work, have about 30 short films. And then this year, I just had the itch, right, to do a little short. So I'm on this nonprofit called Social Enterprise Chicago. We help social enterprises send an email out to all the social enterprises in Illinois. One person responded, and his name was Clay Mutert, and him and his dad run Warp Corps in Woodstock, Illinois. You might notice, if you've ever seen Groundhog Day, that is the town where they shot Groundhog Day, the movie with Bill Murray. So I go in there and like I knew they sold skateboards and clothing and coffee to support the community. But then I got there and he's like, yeah, what the community needs now is prevention through engagement. He's like, these kids are overdosing from fentanyl. I didn't even know what fentanyl was when I got in there. And he told me about, the effects of fentanyl, how it's killing people, and it doesn't kill them. It's corrupting their brains, the suicide rates, like all these horrible things, the fentanyl crisis that I never knew about. I went to go shoot a 10-minute video with him in his store. I ended up staying there for 7 hours,
Wow.
running, 2 cameras. I brought quadcopter, just some aerial footage. I was just so sucked into the story. Like, people need to know about this. First, people need to know that it's a for-profit business, not for-profit anymore. It's a social enterprise, right? Business. So they sell things to make money, pay themselves and their employees, and the excess goes to the community to help things with like Narcan and other overdose prevention type things. So I came back. I'm like, well, this is going to be 10 minutes. And I started putting all the footage together. And then I went back and I shot a couple more times. And I'm like, people need to hear this story. So it's the first time that I created my own budget. I hired a sound editor, some other people to help me where I needed it. I edited it, helped someone with promotions and the poster, and submitted to 47 film festivals around the world. And
Wow.
now, so far, got picked up in Portugal and a couple in LA. Right. So learned a lot through this. Right. And I'm not going to say, like, obviously I do this part time. I'm no Martin Scorsese when it comes to film, right? And it's not
Okay.
about, no one's gonna give me awards for best cinematography,
Yeah.
but it's a compelling story and it's a sad
Yeah.
story. But then there's a mission at the end of it. It's like we should be aware of it, we should be doing something about it, and we should be supporting people in our community that are trying to put an end to it. So I'm happy. I won a couple awards at some small film festivals out in LA, and when it's done with the film festival circuit, Warp Corp's in the name of the company that's doing it, and Rob and Clay will own it. And we did a screening for about 200 people in Woodstock when we were done. And it was a great experience. And I've wrote about this before, but I see being a producer and a product manager and consultant, there's very similar lines between that, right? The film is the product, right? I have to go from concept, who am I showing this to, right? Who is my user? What does the story have to be? How is it put together? That technical part is more the cinematic part, right? And the editing and the effects, and you put it together, you package it, and then you have a go-to-market plan. And my go-to-market plan literally is like 18 months, like some other products are, 12 to 18, but we're going to hit these film festivals. We're going to do this. At the end of it, this is what I expect, right? So not that much of a variation, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think it's a great cause, and I think this is something that, because we as product managers, we're always trying to solve problems, right? At the end of the day, and I think giving back the community and looking at things in a different perspective is always important.
Yeah.
All right, so when we look now at the innovations you contribute to, so you talked about machine learning, AI, getting more into personal experience. You said focusing more on commercially viable applications. So if you had to choose one, right, to put your big bet on it for the next 10 years, which one
Yeah.
would it be?
Definitely artificial intelligence. It's the next change, right? I'd say this is the biggest change since the internet happened in the 90s. It fundamentally changes the way that we operate. I've done a lot of I've worked in product management, in consulting, and we've always the companies I've worked at has had data analytics arm. So the first product I built backed by machine learning was in 2019. I thought that was cool. We were doing predictive analytics for a sales cycle, and then for a finance department to be able to detect which vendors are going to default. And so, I think we did 7 prototypes in a year for this company. And the team that I worked with they were awesome, right? Because I've never, I've done stuff with NLP before that, but never like machine learning. So I thought MLP was cool. I did some apps in that at another healthcare startup that I worked at. So I mean, that was 2018, right? So it was like NLP, machine learning. Now we're at AI. Like in that general sphere of AI, like this is going to keep transforming, and the things that we can do are amazing. Like for example, the NLP we did on Alexa was for a home in Chicago that people were visually impaired, right? So you can't have an app or a phone, computer, right? Like that's not of use to them. But now they could talk to Alexa. Hey, what's on the menu today? Are there any activities going on? Right? We use that NLP to build a platform that connected to their community engagement platform. Awesome, right? Like, and then the machine learning products, and then we did one currently over the summer about analyzing social determinants of health, the diseases that were most prevalent in these areas of social determinants of health, and then what are the best insurance options and stuff for them, right? So I'm lucky. I'm very blessed that I've been able to work on stuff that have had a benefit for other people, right? And I'm not like working on crypto mining AI or some irrelevant stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's to me like there's a mission and a purpose behind it, and I'm glad I've had the opportunity. So I see that continue to be more prevalent, right? Me and Stefan from the Product Insider just wrote an article for Built In that's going to be released in the next week or two about what we see the future for product management being next year, and it's all AI based. And there's things in pharmacy and healthcare and gamification. I mean, it's 10xing all these different areas, right? So it's going to be
Yeah,
wild
yeah.
to see how this transforms in 24.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think I've been playing around with all these custom chat GPTs, right? And I think it's
Yeah, me
the
too.
amount of
Yeah,
playing through is quite
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I took the book that we talked about
Yeah.
last time we wrote on gamification, and I created a custom LLM that will answer questions about gamification using the research and our perspectives that we wrote in our book, right? So I basically turned our book into an LLM model, and it's wild. I still want everyone to read the book. Please read the book. But if you need specific questions answered,
That's
we do
amazing.
have that custom LLM out there.
Yeah, that's quite good. That's quite good. So, if you move now more into lessons learned and insights, right? I think one of the great things I've seen over the text writes that you view a product manager as a blend between user empathy, salesmanship, and leadership. And you always said that keeping that kind of human element front and center is critical for continued impact. So, if you can shed a bit of light about why should every product manager become a great salesman?
Yeah, great question. I think going back to, we wrote a whole chapter about this in the gamification book, because you could have the best concept, right? And it's like, I gamified this and I ordered this incentive and user love it and everything, and I tested it and it's great. So then you have to go to your boss and be like, hey boss, I need, $1,000 for incentives because it's going to drive user engagement 130%, right? And they're like, no, why? And like, if you don't know how to clearly articulate your vision and make an argument, making a well thought out, well constructed argument is a form of sales, right? You should do this, and this is why you should do this, and this is the benefit that you get from it. So, again, in product management, we have to have those conversations with engineering, with design, our stakeholders, the business. I classify it as sales because, you're selling an idea about your product, or you're selling your product to other people. At the end of the day, people have to buy our product, or we're bad product managers too, right? So you have to be able to sell your product as well. And it's not that, you're a salesperson as a PM, but that's a skill that you should pick up. You should look at the best salespeople, see how they communicate, see what platforms and structures that they use, and think about that in your career and how those tactics and learning can help you to be a better PM. My point is not to be a salesman, but to take the elements of successful salespeople and concept of sales and incorporate it into your language and argument building.
Yeah, I think this is a really great point. I think at the end of the day, you don't want to become a salesman, right? But you need to be able to convince people in front of you because maybe you
Huh.
believe in the product, maybe you have all these arguments, but if you're not able to craft them in a way that convinced others, it becomes quite a problem.
Yeah, and so core concept, how to win friends and influence people, right? Because that's what you're doing. You're winning friends and you're
Yes,
influencing people. So that book
that's
by Dale
that's a good one.
Carnegie should be like that's one of the foundations of great product people.
Yes, no, I think this is a good one. I think the soft skills part is a critical one because usually people think that I need to be strong technically, I need to know about the market, about the product, but all of this has no effect if you're not able to convince your stakeholders. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one of the great things also said that people actually should start to stop studying for a little bit and start actually building, right? And you always have to keep that kind of learning. So, regardless of your current level, you have to always look for opportunities to expand your knowledge across disciplines, be the designer, the engineer, and the marketer as well.
Yep.
So, if you start looking at this, I think the problem we always face with product managers is that it's a kind of a field that anyone can enter into. But at the end of the day, you need to be able to have understanding and discipline from different areas, from a designer perspective, from a marketer perspective, even from an engineering perspective, even if you don't come from an engineering part. So for someone who doesn't have any of these backgrounds, what's your advice to them? How can they actually start forming that kind of perspectives?
So I think it's a combination, like a trifecta of a couple different things, right? It's find something that you're passionate about and build it, right? So we talk about build something yourself, be the engineer, be the designer, be the marketer. If you don't have any ideas of something you want to build, go volunteer, go on a nonprofit board, right? That's how I started in the nonprofit space, and they needed everything done. They needed design, video, engineer. Like I got to go do all those things and get paid for it, albeit not a lot of money, but I was still getting paid enough to survive. But I got to do all these things because they didn't have the budget to hire all these different people, and they didn't have the budget for that, right? So either volunteer, go work for a nonprofit that needs some of these things. And the other thing is like studying, right? Find a mentor, and I'm not to say buy a bunch of books, but find one great design book, one great engineering book. There's a ton of free classes on Coursera. It's not all about certifications, all right? It's not all about Scrum certificates and stuff like that. That's where I think a lot of new product managers fail. Just like, oh, I'm the best at agile, or like I'm a release train expert. It's like, great, like that's one aspect of this, right? And like, don't stop thinking about product management in like this narrow scope of I need these certifications to what are the skills that I need to be a well-rounded product director, product leader, right? So set the goal high from the start. You need to know the baseline stuff. There's a lot of other things that come into play with being a good PM.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think at the end of the day, you need to look from a different perspective, right? Building something yourself maybe will not teach you all the skills that a designer have or marketer have or engineer has, but it will teach you how to look from their own perspectives, and you can say, okay, I understand what you mean, frankly speaking, because that kind of empathy we always need. I always hear designers being, I would say, angry, frustrated at product managers because he doesn't get it. He just doesn't get it.
Yep. So that's some of the best advice. I got to meet Robert Rodriguez at Sundance, and I read his book. He's the director of Alvin Mariachi and Desperado and stuff like that. And I read his book before Sundance. I'm like, dude, thank you for writing that book. It gave me such good perspective. Because his first film, he shot it and he edited it and he did the sound and like, some of the acting, but all, like, he played every part in that film. And he's like, the biggest benefit to me is like when I had to work on a big project with other people, like I knew the strengths and weaknesses of each position, right? Because I was there before and I understand that position. So I think that same thing again applies to product management, right? Play every position and then you'll understand the strengths and weaknesses of what those team members have to go through.
Yeah. Now, we move actually to the fifth part, which is more on the personal interests and the motivation. So I think you had several hobbies, and I think reading was one of the ones I was actually inspired about. But I think you always need to have a hobby outside work, because I keep seeing people becoming more of a workaholics, right? They don't have hobbies, interests, other stuff that gets on side of work. I understand that it's always tough because you want to prove yourself, you want to make things work. But at the end of the day, I think having a hobby, having something that fuel your creativity and also rest your mind is always important. You said very important point, right? It gets you more inquisitive and have more kind of intellectual curiosity. So what would you say actually to people who actually think that just being more of a workaholic will get them through the ranks and will get them better jobs? But I think having that kind of outside work life is as important as having the work done in the right way.
Yeah, because I could say I'm a workaholic, but it's not all at my full-time job. It's, it is 40 to 50 hours a week at the full-time job. I made a commitment to keep writing after the book, right? So I write for probably 3 to 4 hours a week. Had the book published in October, have been publishing a weekly article every week. Hope y'all could sign up for it. And then besides that, like, I don't have the time for film stuff right now because of writing, but if there's a gap and I could pick up, again, we talked about building the LLMs, right? I spent almost the whole weekend developing a suite of large language models based on certain things because I thought it was interesting and cool, and I love doing stuff like that. And then to keep me sharp on the data side, I play fantasy sports, especially fantasy baseball. And I've actually, like last season, I worked with a couple of data science to help me build this model to predict who I should draft in my fantasy baseball team.
Wow.
So baseball is very interesting to me. I love baseball, and that motivation to like, hey, I could be a better fantasy baseball player if I know the data better, and did this model. And it was a test. It was a pilot. None of that matters if all your best players get hurt, right? So I found out like, it's there's data science is not going to make me a better fantasy player. It's fun. Yeah. It helps me learn it, is baseball and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I just like to stay busy. I say, I keep busy and I stay out of trouble.
Yeah. I think this is quite good. So when you look at inspirational figures, right, you mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger and Dan Olson, right? So from your own perspective, what did you admire about each of them?
I mean, I read Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography and on his email list, right? I think it's like a spillover from working in the fitness industry, like being very involved in that. I read his book and just like his life story is amazing. You know, he was a millionaire in real estate before he ever became an actor. He came over to the United States barely knowing English, and you know he was a bodybuilder, and that's you don't have to talk when you're a bodybuilder, you just have to flex, right?
Yeah.
So you know he's making money in real estate, he's learning, it's just his drive to become better and better, and he got into politics and movie actor and all the things that he did because he had the mindset, if I want to do something, I'm going to do it. But not that he just expects for it to happen. He builds out a plan, right? If I'm going to be the best bodybuilder in the world, I got to do these things. I got to give up this stuff. If I want to be a politician, he talks about it. He's like, it's going to put some strain on my family, and I'm going to talk with them. They're going to be okay with this, but this is the route that I'm going to go, right? And this is what I have to give up to be a politician. And his drive and his success to me is really inspiring because, and also a lot of people, you know, they don't know this and they take him for granted, right? Oh, he's just some, you
Yeah.
know, some bodybuilder or some action star. It's like, no, he's actually a super intelligent, hard driven person. And I just picked him as one, but you know, when I read or listen to audiobooks, I listen to a lot of biographies of successful business people because you could learn from them, right? I mean, in PMs, we're in the business of building products. So that's one. And I'd say I just, after writing the book, and I knew of Dan's book, but I started following him in like the last 6 months. And he's someone I kind of like, oh, I love what he's doing. You know, he's a successful book. He's going around speaking at conferences. He's a product management expert. He's got his own great brand, right? So, you know, that I'm like, oh, that's like something I aspire to be, right? So Dan's more of a, I see where you are in your career. I love the path that you take. Thanks for being an inspiration. You know, I'd like to do something like that.
Yeah, that's quite good. So before we close here, I think I want you to read the code that you wrote because I think it's one of the most inspiring ones I've read for quite some time. If you can let the audience know what's your kind of inspiration code that you live by.
Yeah, you know, and this comes within the last few years, and I think anyone in product management can relate to this. And it's a quote by Chuck Palahniuk, and it says, "We all die. The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will." Right? So if that's
Yeah,
motivation for product managers, right? Like we leave our mark on the world by the things that we help create, right? Whether
yeah,
that's the articles, the books, the products, right? So we're not going to live forever, but we can, you know, hopefully, you know, create something that, you know, will.
yeah, yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of the PM Saga episode one.
Yeah.
Though, Mike, thanks a lot. I really appreciate all the opportunity, and I think that this kind of story is what really inspires others to try and pursue the dreams and try to do something different and actually go into product management because I think that this is one of the few fields where people from different backgrounds can actually
Mhm.
enter into it and can actually contribute something of value.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, and that's the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. Like, you could do it, right? Like, you have to be empathetic, have the right mindset and the willingness to learn. And like anyone can get into product management. You just have to understand how and be able to make the commitments to do the things that you need to do to become a great PM. So I always enjoy talking to you. Thank you for having me on. We always have incredible conversations, both, you know, before and after your podcast. So I wish you best of luck.
Thanks a lot. So, Mike, if people wanted to reach out to you, so what's your best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, I would say reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find me at Mike Hyzy on LinkedIn. MikeHyzy.com is my website. You could reach out through there. And or you know mike.hyzy@gmail.com. Shoot me an email.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Cool. Thank you. Have a good one.